Hello, my name is Matthew Beckstead. I am a cross country and track and field coach where I specialize in the sprints, hurdles, and relays. I'm entering into my third year here at the college level. Prior to this, I spent 10 years at the high school level coaching both cross country and track. I spent 4 of those years as a head coach in track and field. Today, I'll be discussing the 3 most common issues that I have come across in my sport. I feel like the number one issue that I deal with is the mental emotional side of coaching. I feel like it's an area that's often overlooked by a lot of coaches. They're so focused on the physical aspect of the sport that it's something that I find that my athletes get to me at the college level. I'm kind of surprised as to how much of the mental side isn't covered in our sports. One thing that I'm kind of seeing in relation to that is that it seems that athletes tend to be real negatively focused on certain outcomes based on practices, having a bad day in practice or losing the competition. A common thread is that I find that a lot of athletes tend to be really hard on themselves and only being able to focus on the negative aspects and kind of using that to kind of beat themselves up instead of using those moments as learning experiences to motivate them to want to become better athletes. I'm kind of surprised that even with my more athletically gifted or more physically talented athletes that even they have a hard time with self-confidence issues and their ability to overcome challenges. And so that's something that I strive to work on almost on a daily basis. Number 2 is communication. I'm a huge proponent of communication. I tell my athletes I'd rather have you tell me too much than not enough. I try to help them understand that it's better to be proactive in communicating, starting in the lines of communication sooner in the process instead of waiting for things to happen and being reactive. I think that also learning etiquette and syntax in communication and learning and understanding that there's a certain way to say things, there's a certain way not to say things, there's learning to be professional, respectful, knowing when to send a message, like a text message, instead of sending it at midnight, maybe you should wait till the next day. Those sort of things. As a college coach, I'm also dealing with recruiting, and I think that one of the challenges I face in terms of communication when it comes to recruiting is that I will spend a lot of time and resources recruiting athletes and communicating back and forth with them, and then all of a sudden I'll get ghosted where there's communication going back and forth and then nothing on their end. And I think that that's a big problem. I think that, in the professional world, if you don't if something doesn't work out, you're better off telling that person, hey, thanks, but no thanks, or hey, something's changed, but we're going to go in a different direction. I think that that's more professional than not communicating with them at all and kind of leaving out that person out there hanging and they have no idea as to what's going on, especially if they're waiting on a response from you. And I think that that's an issue it's a growing problem, because I've seen that as a whole from a lot of young kids that I'm talking to at the high school level, and I think that they think that that's just okay. And I think it's a problem. I think especially moving forward as they get older and having to take on responsibilities not only with school but jobs later on in life, I think that that's something that should be addressed. Third issue that I see is the lack of cross-training. I think it's really sad you don't see as many athletes cross-training or playing multi-sports. You're finding more kids are specializing or focusing on one sport at even younger and younger ages, and that only leads to that only puts the athletes at risk for injuries, burnout, and lack of interest in the sports, and not to mention the lost opportunities that they could have in other sports that they could have the ability to do well in, maybe even better than the sport that they're choosing to specialize in. You know, I think for me as a track and field coach, especially at the high school level, it was real common for me to get kids out for track and field for the first time ever as a junior. And I would tell those kids, it's like, man, where were you the last 2 years? You know, if you would have came to me as a freshman, man, the sky would be the limit. So I'd essentially have more time to work with them. But, you know, I think that, I think a lot of parents think that all their kids are going to turn pro or get a scholarship or become a professional athlete. And I think that that's not the case, and it's not a realistic or a healthy message to be sending to kids today. And I think that there's more that can come out of letting them experience multiple sports. And I also think that you know, it's something that I deal with a lot in track and field in terms of, you know, there's a lot of private coaching that goes on, and kids want the instant satisfaction of wanting results now, and you know, it doesn't work that way. Certainly not for track, and I know it doesn't work that way for a lot of sports. And so I think that that's another issue that I deal with as a track and field coach. And the last thing I'll say is that for all you other coaches out there, it's more so a request. Stop using running as a form of punishment. I would suggest that there's a million exercises you can use. I don't know why the default is making kids run as a punishment. I think that is only hurt track and field in the long run, because I get these kids that want nothing to do with me as a track coach because they've had to run for every sport. They've had to run for a punishment, and so they have no interest in seeking out track because they think track is a punishment within itself. But that's all I got. Thank you for your time.